You are watching a new episode of the Guru Prospective every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Welcome to a new episode of the Guru Perspective, and I'm your host, the Guru Hewley himself. I would like to say thank you all for chiming in, and the people who subscribe, people who give comments, and people who given me input on things that I should do. And one thing I like to say is thank you. I don't mind anybody hitting me up and linking in my comments and giving me, a word of advice or telling me some things that I should do or tweak. It definitely goes in a situation where I appreciate anything anybody tells me or any advice. And I would like to do the best that I could to continue to make the best product for you guys to listen to and to watch as far as my podcast, The Guru Perspective. And I like to say thank you. Any advice is good advice to me. And I'll definitely consider if I feel like it's worth me being bothered and putting on my brand. I want to start off and I want to talk about some of the things that happened in college sports world, over this weekend. It was a few blowouts and it was some close games, more close games than I expected on some points. But this is just how it is in college. You got some games where you don't really want to watch and some games that you'd be more excited about that you didn't even expect to be excited about. I want to start off and I want to talk about some of the games that I thought that would have been a little bit better than what was performed. Number 3, Texas A&M versus number 22, Mizzou. And then the thing is with me is the fact that if Mizzou would have stayed in their division, if I'm not mistaken, it was Big 12. If they would have stayed put to where they was rather than going to SEC, I think that they'd be more dominant right now, especially because outside of me, now this year, surprisingly, the ACC, Big 10, and the SEC, it's not really too much parity as far as other places and, the NCAA collegiate level. It's just unfortunate they had to face number 3 Texas A&M, and they've been on the roll. Marcel Reed has been definitely one of the best players and one of the Heisman candidates. I say they're still undefeated, and the win was a really it was a big statement because not only was it a ranked team, but they made them look bad too as well. That final score was 38-17. Marcel Reed had an okay day, 222 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. But the running back carried the load as well. Ruben Owens the second, 84 yards, actually 102 yards on 13 carries and 2 touchdowns. Apologize for that. And wide receiver Casey Conception, 84 yards on 4 receptions and a touchdown as well. I didn't really see much from, Missouri, and I was disappointed because Matt Zollers didn't really do anything at all. He was 7 to 22, 77 yards. The person who stepped up in this game was Jamal Roberts, the running back, 17 carries, 110 yards, and a score. And it wasn't really too much going on in Missouri. I just felt like what happened was you faced the number 3 ranked team at Texas A&M, and they punched them in the mouth, and there was enough being said. I want to see what's going to happen too as far as the ranking go because it was some close games, and I want to know if some of these close games against teams, especially unranked teams, will hurt some of these teams. Because right now, if I had a choice, I feel like Texas A&M should be number 2, and we'll get off into that. I want to move on. I want to talk about the Oregon-Iowa game. And that's what I really wanted to talk about because that was closer than what I actually expected. And I didn't think that that was going to be the case, but it was a really good game, by the way. I want to go ahead and I want to talk about that game because it was too close for comfort for me. I thought that Oregon would win convincingly, but number 9 Oregon had their chances. And, they struggled against Iowa. If I'm not mistaken, I definitely said in this one it might be closer than what people would give credit because of the fact that Iowa's very disciplined. They got a really good team. They win in the trenches, and that's what makes them such a special team. Yeah, they lost 3 games, but you can never count them out of any game whatsoever. And when I seen this game, I said, okay, how is this going to pan out? Mark Granikowski had 138 yards, 10 of 18 passes, and he had a touchdown on the day. What surprised me was Deontay Moore didn't really look as good as well. He had 112 yards, 13 of 21, and he had an interception on the day. That final score was Oregon having to come back and win. And it was 18-16, kind of funky score, but then at the same time, it was a Big Ten game, division rivalry. I definitely thought Iowa had this game at first until they didn't. Still give credit to number 9 Oregon because they persevered and they ended up coming out with the victory. The next game to me really was shocking was BYU and Texas Tech. I sat up and watched that game. I thought that it was going to be a better contested game because you have a really strong team in BYU and you had Texas Tech as well. But then at the same time, Texas Tech was feeling themselves. They had a special guest on there, and it was Patrick Mahomes. He had his bye week. He was there with his wife and he was ready for some good action. BYU, I just didn't think they showed up in this game, and it showed too, especially being on the road against a Texas Tech team who was hungry. They looked really good as well, and it was a very dominant performance, if I should say. Um, Beren Morton had 219 yards, and he had a touchdown. And running back Cameron Dickey looked pretty good on the ground, 23 carries, 121 yards, and a touchdown. On the other end, BYU was looking kind of stagnant. Bear Botchmeyer 188 yards, 23 of 38. He had a touchdown and a pick on the day, but that was the only offense that they had because, I mean, let's be honest, Texas Tech punched them in the mouth. And I was just really surprised because I thought BYU would put up a bigger fight than that. When BYU scored the touchdown, it was basically a shutout at the time. And Texas Tech just basically looked like they took the foot off the gas. But you got to definitely respect that team. I believe they'll be in the playoffs. And not only that, they're going to be a team to be reckoned with. So you can't take Texas Tech lightly this year. I still don't feel like they're the best team in Texas A&M, until they prove me wrong. Until then, I would like to see that battle. I want to go on and I want to talk about LSU and Alabama. This was a game that I thought that possibly could be a trap game because LSU had everything to lose. And I looked at it too. They just fired Brian Kelly. They had a coach in there and he was bringing in old players from the past and, making them believe that they had a chance in this game. And they definitely did because the game was not as bad as you thought that it would be. But at the time, too, I looked at it and I said, it's going to take both sides of the ball for Alabama to pull this game off. And that's exactly what happened. The defense was ferocious. The offense did just enough to win. And what I liked about this game was, too, that with Alabama, this was the first time in a long time that the defense really was the, front and center. And they took center stage in this game because they only gave up 3 field goals. Gus Nussmeier, no disrespecting him, but I just definitely feel like they were saying at one point that he wasn't healthy and he was banged up. But I haven't seen even in a healthy game that him really stepping up and, being the guy that they thought that he was going to be in LSU. That's just my opinion. At the same time, number 4 Alabama, Ty Simpson's been looking really sharp, man. He's definitely tightened up after that loss against Florida State. 277 yards, 21 to 35, and he had a score. Running backs hasn't really been like a powerhouse right now in Alabama, which something is really like a head scratcher because you're used to them having good running backs and putting up big games. Daniel Hill basically had 21 yards on 7 carries and a touchdown. But besides that, it was a really good game. Ryan Williams stepped up too and got a really nice, spectacular touchdown. But I just didn't really see a lot from LSU. But I know they're going to hit the reset button, look for a new head coach. But it was a dominant, performance from Alabama. I like to give them credit where credit is due. Number 4, Alabama won 20-9. And like I said, it was only 3 field goals that they gave up. So I feel like Alabama on offense is explosive when they need to be, and the defense really been stepping up in the trenches. Not only that, too, but the halftime adjustment's been awesome as well. If it's a close game, they find a way to shut out teams in that second half, and they just, put their dominance in on a game. And I believe right now, Caleb DeBoer is really doing a good job. I was telling people to trust him, trust the process. And I said that he was going to be okay for Alabama. I wasn't really sure that it was going to be this year or this fast, but I believe what woke them up definitely was that loss to Florida State. And now they stepped their game up and they're looking like a competitor. Not only that, but they look like they're going to be one of those playoff teams that go pretty far this year. Now that it's the 12 teams, I'm definitely looking forward to where they're going to be ranked at the end and who they're going to face. I want to move on now and I want to talk about number two, Indiana and Penn State. I was talking to my buddy, and I think that when I was talking to Eric, he thought that I was saying Penn State, regardless of the fact that they, regardless of whatever happened and what they did or what efforts they put in, they still lost. No, I actually am a huge fan of Indiana. But when it comes to underdogs and when it came to that underdog story, I start feeling Penn State, because James Franklin would have got blew out in a game like this and he wouldn't even put up the effort that this team did. And they fought all the way to the end. It took a spectacular catch that at first I didn't even think was a catch for Indiana to win, but you got to give credit where credit is due because Indiana is for real. And I've been saying I thought they was, but man, this game proved to me that they were. And Fernando Mendoza, he didn't even really have his best game. 218 yards, 19 of 30. He had a touchdown and a pick on the day. But surprisingly, Ethan Grunkemeyer, a guy who's normally not playing, is Drew Aller. He didn't have a bad game, but they were like neck and neck as far as everything, when the passing rating and, the passing yards as well. It's too close for comfort because he had 219 yards, 22 of 31, a touchdown, and he had a pick as well. The person who really stepped up, and they didn't even have a triple digit run ground game, was Nicholas Singleton. He had 10 carries, 71 yards, and he had two scores. Like I said, he didn't get 100 yards, but he got the necessary pay dirt and he got the touchdowns that they needed. It was just unfortunate that spectacular catch, man. That was an NFL catch if you didn't see it, man. You guys, that was one hell of a game over the weekend. And what I liked about it was it took the last minute for Indiana to win. I mean, the kid caught the ball and he put both feet in. NFL style to win that game. That final score was 27-24. I see a good future for Penn State. I don't know if it's championship, but I still feel like if they believe and continue to fight hard like that, I want to see what they can do within the next season. Let me go on and let me talk about Washington and Wisconsin. I was surprised with that game. I definitely felt like Washington was the better team, honestly. They did well this season, and everybody been telling me to look out for their quarterback, and I've been looking out for him, and the kid is actually what they say he is. Demond Williams Jr. He had 134 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. But at the same time, he had 19 carries and 61 yards, so he was most of their offense. Denzel Boston had 62 yards on 8 receptions in the score. Wisconsin, when it came to like just really like doing anything in the passing game, it wasn't there. And I think Sean West was 1 for 1 with 24 yards. But the game itself, as far as when it came to the execution with Wisconsin, we know with Iowa and Wisconsin, when it comes to Big Ten play, what you're going to get some really good, disciplined, sound play on both sides of the ball, especially in the trenches. That game came down to, I just feel like the perseverance. And I just felt like Wisconsin wanted it more. When you hear the score, you'll definitely feel and hear where I'm coming from. And it was a dominant defense performance too from Wisconsin that pulled off this game. That final score was 13-10, and Wisconsin pulled the upset against number 23 Washington. Another game that was a shocker to me was the Cal versus Louisville game. Didn't think that was going to go down the way that did, but it was a good game nonetheless. Cal quarterback, phenomenal. Jerron Kawhi, Sagaputulele, man, don't get me the line, you guys. If you know, you know. But he had 323 yards, 30 of 47, and two touchdowns in the game. The run game looked spectacular too. Kendrick Raphael, 83 yards on 19 carries and a touchdown. And Jacob DeJesus, wide receiver, 16 receptions, 158 yards, and a touchdown. This team was pretty explosive. And then now I'm looking at their record. They're 6-4. I believe they went under the radar. And this was one of those, like I said, divisional rivalries with California. Just seemed like they wanted it more. And that's what Cal did. Cal, the Golden Bears, they went out there and they just basically said, hey, we want the game a little bit more than what you guys want. Because I didn't really see much. And I'm looking at Miller Moss's numbers. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great neither. 203 yards, 20 of 38, and he had a pick on the day. You had some good running, on the ground too. The ground play with Keyshawn Brown. He had 136 carries. 136 yards on 14 carries. I just believe that California, the Golden Bears, just went out there and they said, hey, yeah, we're the underdogs. But at the same time, definitely being on the road in Louisville to pull this game off, I had to give credit to that team. And it's all due respect to the team who really was been one of the punching bags of this division. And now they're stepping up and they're starting to show their dominance. They might play spoiler when it comes to some teams going down the line too. So keep your eye out on Cal, because Cal looked pretty good in this game. That final score, they won in overtime, 29-26. I want to talk about some things that I have to give honorable mention to as well, which I was surprised about. The Wake Forest and Virginia game, I thought that was going to be a game that Virginia, showed their dominance. They were 8-1 on the season and they were at home too as well. So I was surprised that the Deacon Demons came out and beat them because people were saying that Pat McCaffrey and some of the other, analysts who was talking about the game, you never know which team you're going to get when it comes to, Wake Forest. One week they play good, the next week they play bad, but they said they played bad last week, so they expected to win this week. And it wasn't really too much scoring going on here, but it was a good contest. And that final score was Wake Forest, Deacon Demons came out on top and they stunned Virginia at home. The final score was 16-9. I definitely wanted to, give them their credit where credit is due because I think some of these teams that I thought had no business winning some of these games went out there and said, man, hey, we're gonna go out here and we're gonna give it our best, win or lose. We're not gonna put our heads down. Shouts out to Penn State too, because Penn State definitely almost upset Indiana. And I just didn't think that I'd see that performance with James Franklin. That's just me. I want to move on and I want to talk about some things in the NFL and I want to get the bad games out the way first. You know, I want to start off, man, these Thursday night games hasn't been, as good as I thought that they'd be. Some of them been good, but this one was a really bad one. This was probably one of the worst by far. Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. It was very pedestrian. Bo Nix had 150 yards, a touchdown, and two picks. And Geno Smith had 143 yards, and he had a pick as well. Austin Jennings seen the end zone. He had 60 yards in the score, but this was a really bad performance. Most of this day and when I seen this game was, for the most part, field goals, and it was bad. I actually went to sleep on this game and then tried to see the replay and just dozed off on the replay. That's how bad it was. That final score was 10-7. Yes, you heard me correctly. I want to talk about too that Saints and Panthers game. And my colleague was talking mess to me, my podcast partner saying he don't trust Bryce Young and his team. Even when the Panthers won these games, he didn't look good doing it. I haven't really seen too many big performances from Bryce Young. The defense has been holding them in a lot of these games. They only gave up 17 points and they still lost this game too. Tyler Shaw looked really sharp in this game, 282 yards, 19 to 27 and two scores. On the other hand, This guy's a rookie, Tyler Shaw. Let me say that. Bryce Young in his second year, 124 yards, 17 to 25, and an interception. I definitely expected more from him, but now I'm starting to look at it like he's basically a Teddy Bridgewater at best in the NFL. And it's possible that I'm saying this, I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. I'm not putting words in Carolina Panthers' mouth and saying what they're going to do. But I wouldn't be surprised if it comes to next season that they try to get them a quarterback or be seeking a quarterback in free agency or either via the draft. Because right now, unfortunately, I just don't think Bryce Young is it. Alvin Kamara had 83 yards on 22 carries, and Rico Dowdle had 18 carries, 53 yards, and a touchdown as well. Chris Olave looked sharp, man. Damn, this was a breakout game for him. And I always felt like he was a good wide receiver, but I mean, this year was his breakout game. 5 receptions, 104 yards, and a touchdown, and he had a very spectacular one-hand catch as well. That final score was 17-7. I want to move on because I shouldn't even spend that much time on that, and I apologize. The Monday Night Football game, very pedestrian. Sorry, Eagle fans, I don't really want to say too much, but yeah, I want to not say too much because we got to play them on Sunday night, and I'll be doing my predictions about that soon. Only touchdown in this game was from Jalen Hurts when he threw a bomb to Devontae Smith and he caught it in the end zone. I think it was like a 40, 50-yard bomb. But other than that, they were neck and neck as far as the passing game, and it was ferocious. Jalen Hurts had 183 yards, 15 to 26 in the touchdown, and then Jordan Love had 176 yards, 20 of 36 and no touchdowns. The thing was, what I didn't understand was both teams didn't really have a run game, but I still feel like when they gave the ball to Josh Jacobs, he looked pretty good on the ground. He had 74 yards on 21 carries and a score. They shut down Saquon Barkley. They said Saquon is not going to beat us. He had 22 carries with 60 yards. And like I said, Devontae Smith had 4 receptions with a touchdown. The funky part about the end of this game was I thought that they were going to kick a field goal to try to run out a little bit more time, but they went for it, like on the 4-6, trying to get the ball to A.J. Brown, I guess, to make him happy. And it didn't convert, but that still gave Green Bay Packers a chance to at least kick a field goal and take it into overtime. It was a little too close for comfort, but the game was awful. That final score, like I said, was 10-7. It was 2 10-7 games, and I was thinking, what score or what game's going to be worse this weekend than the Thursday night game? And the Thursday night game was just as bad as the Monday night game. For all my defensive players out there or people who love defense, it was a really good, well contested defensive performance on both sides. Funny thing is, I got to pull this out for you guys too because I thought this was interesting. The Packers have allowed just 39 total points and 780 total yards in 3 losses this season. They're the first team in NFL to allow fewer than 40 points and fewer than 800 yards over the first 3 losses of the season since the Detroit Lions in the 1940s. So let that sink in. The defense is everything that we thought it would be with Micah Parsons, but that offense not clicking. And I understand we have injuries in the league, and that's really like we look at it like the best man up or the next man up. You have Matthew Golden who was out, Tucker Kraft wasn't there, and your center, is injured, might be out for the season. I'm not sure. But all teams have these injuries. We have interior problems right now in Detroit, and our defense is not 100%. But that's just a part of the game. But even when you guys were healthy with Tucker Kraft and some of your other weapons, they're not putting up the points. Sometimes I feel like Jordan Love tried to overdo it and do too much. I'm not going to say what Colin Cowherd said and saying he's not the guy. He don't think that he's going to be the guy. Like how he bashed him and J.J. McCarthy. I'm not going to go there. But I just feel like that offense needs to step their game up because the defense showing hella effort. And then, I know Josh Jacobs wasn't too happy at the end of the game because he felt like the run game was working and he didn't feel like he was getting the ball enough. Let me get into some of the more interesting games. The New England Patriots versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It wasn't a bad game. I feel like they went back and forth in this contest. At one point, it was pedestrian. It wasn't nobody scoring. Tampa Bay got in, with Ibuka. And when Ibuka scored, I said, okay, this was going to be a good, hell of a contest. And I wanted to see what was going to be in store. What surprised me was it took a play where I didn't think that it was going to be possible that they was going to get a score on. But Drake May stepped back and he had pressure and he threw the ball to Kyle. I'm trying to see, was it Kyle? I forgot his last name, you guys. Give me a second. But the kid, he was a rookie. And when I say that he really stepped his game up, it was just a crazy play because when I looked up, I said, man, this kid got some wheels. He cocked back, he threw the ball. The kid caught the ball on that route, and it was basically like a 10-yard route to the sideline. But when he caught it before the wink of an eye, he was already down the field, and the game was tied. And that's when I looked up and seen the Patriots look like they were going to start to get the momentum in the game. It went back and forth, and it still got to the point where I thought the New England Patriots took the game and ran with it. But then you can't take away from the heart of a champion in Baker Mayfield. That guy, man, not only was he like one of the comeback player of the year candidates last season, but this is a really good team. Even with all the injuries, he's not making any excuses. He had 273 yards and 3 touchdowns in this game. Drake May had 270 yards with 2 touchdowns and a pick on the day. This was a coming out party for Travion Henderson, the former Ohio State player. Now, I thought that he was going to be explosive and play well from the beginning. I just feel like he had to get adjusted to the league. At one point, this kid didn't really look so good. And I believe Ramondre Stevens was the reason because they wanted to give him more reps. But as soon as Ramondre Stevenson started to have the fumbleitis like he normally do, I said, yeah, they're going to give Travion Henderson a chance to shine. And when they did that, unfortunately, it happened because they have the injuries right now in the backfield. But he really stepped his game up. 147 yards on 14 carries and 2 touchdowns. I think it was like explosive runs too. It wasn't like he had no run where it was like maybe a couple yards here and there. He had a 50-yarder and he just was putting on the burners in this game. He showed the reason why he was such a coveted high draft pick. And I definitely want to see what he do the rest of this season. This was a breakout game for him. Like I said, 2 touchdowns, 147 yards on 14 carries. I would like to see a lot more from him. Matt Hollins had 106 yards on 6 receptions as well. The only person I feel like stepped up over there in Tampa was Ibuka. Emeka Ibuka really looked good in the game, 115 yards, 6 receptions, and the score. But the game was still too close for comfort when I thought that it was over with. Because when it was like 17-28, I said that's it. But Baker Mayfield definitely showed why he's one of the grittiest and one of the best quarterbacks when it comes to the game right now. That final score was 28-23. It was a good game too, as well, as I may add. I want to go into the Detroit Lions game. I feel like Detroit Lions was pissed because they had a lot to prove. First and foremost, they didn't like the way they went out last season against the Washington Commanders. I would have liked for them to have a healthier team. That's my opinion. No disrespect. I feel like the more healthy that they would have been, the better this victory would have been for me. Yeah, they had a lot of guys who were banged up on their team. And this is the reason why I looked at it like, well, we should beat them the way we did. Goff looked pretty sharp on the day, 320 yards, 25 to 33, and 3 touchdowns. Marcus Mariota didn't look too bad neither. He had 213 yards, 16 to 22, and he had 2 touchdowns on the day. But Jameer Gibbs was that guy in this game. He had 142 yards on 15 carries and 2 touchdowns. And then Jameson Williams really had a good game. It's funny too because he hasn't been a part of like our offense for a while. At some point, some days he'll be in there and he'll look sharp, and sometimes he'll be non-existent and he barely get the ball thrown his way. He had 119 yards, 6 receptions, and a score. The funny thing is too, I wanted to say this to you guys because It took Dan Campbell to say, "Hey, let me take over in the play calls." And then, my nephew Deanie showed me something too. Him and my other nephew Tyler. If y'all listening, I appreciate when y'all be giving me stats and things too. It was a situation when he was in New York with Todd Bowles, and he wasn't focusing on a good run game. He was just focused more on the pass attack, and the team wasn't clicking, and they didn't look so well. Todd Bowles ended up getting rid of him because he felt like his inconsistencies as a play caller was the reason why he had to move on. I'm not saying this is what Dan Campbell doing, but when you see Dan Campbell with that hat and the sexy specs, and he had that sheet in his hand, and you see him kind of covering his face when he was talking, that's when Tyler gave it to me and said he talked to me and my nephew Deanie. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if, Dan Campbell is calling the plays. Sure enough, soon as he said that, Mike Garofalo was the one who said that Dan Campbell's going to take over in the play calling. And it's funny too, because you've seen how the guys react. They even talked to David Montgomery and asked him, and do you feel like it was a little bit more of a comfort zone when you had Dan Campbell calling the plays? And he said, absolutely, man. When he called the plays, it just makes it seem like you're more comfortable and you're more excited when it comes to execution. And that's what it was. Not only was it a banged up team, and I'm not going to say we beat a team at their best, but then you had Dan Campbell calling plays, and the guys feel more confident in what he was calling and when he was calling these plays. Some really good stuff that he was putting out there, and the execution actually matched as well. That final score was 44-22, and it could have been a whole lot worse. I think they put their foot off the gas. I'm trying to see what's the future for John Morton now after this performance. I really want to know what's going to go on because we got a huge test on the road coming up this Sunday Night Football, and I will give my predictions on that soon. I want to talk about the morning game. The morning game wasn't bad at all. That was a really good trendsetter game to start off this Sunday and, the NFL. When I looked at this game, I looked up and the game was pretty close. I think that at one point Indiana was trailing. It wasn't by a lot. It was like 13-14 by the half. Michael Penix didn't look too bad in this game, but I thought that he'd do a little more. 177 yards, 12 of 28 in the score. On the other hand, Daniel Jones didn't do as much neither. We know right now who's the MVP of that team. Let's keep it, 100 and don't get it twisted. Even though Danny Dimes, or you want to call him Indiana Jones, whatever you want to call him, looked pretty sharp. He had 255 yards, 19 of 26, a touchdown, and he had a pick on the day. But you and I know who's the guy over there. Bijan Robinson had 17 carries and 84 yards. Let's get to it. Jonathan Taylor right now is one of the guys I feel like who is not a quarterback who could possibly win an MVP this year. Yes, when I say this was in the game. This man had 244 yards on 32 carries and 3 touchdowns. He couldn't be stopped. Every time he touched the ball, he had explosive plays. But then I give credit where credit is due too over with Atlanta. Drake London, man, he looked sharp. 104 yards on 6 receptions and a touchdown. Ty Warren, man, the kid that they got from the Colts, which was strange to me too, because a lot of people were saying that he should have been the tight end drafted first ahead of Loveland, but he had 8 receptions and 99 yards and looked more like a wide receiver than anything out there. It's a really explosive team. Like I said before, they got a good offensive line. They're good in the trenches and the defense. Then them getting Sauce Gardner added over there too. I thought that was awesome because they said that we're all in right now. We're trying to win. That final score came down to the very end in overtime. It was very fun and interesting to watch. Definitely started off my Sunday. That final score was 31-25. Another good game that surprised the heck out of me too against two bad teams, but big ups to Aaron Glenn, man. I definitely like to cheer for that man because of what he's done and what he's established and what he instilled in the Detroit Lions organization as a defensive coordinator. Funny thing is, Fields' numbers are so pedestrian. Most for the most part, it's the defense that steps up over there and kind of see that we're in the end zone. And the kicking game, that was history. I've never seen a kickoff for a touchdown and a punt as a touchdown in like consecutive plays. That was very exciting. On the other hand, the pedestrian performance of Justin Fields was saved by their special teams. He had 54 yards on 6-11. He had a touchdown and a pick. Brees Hall had 83 yards on 21 carries, and Quinshon Judkins had 75 yards on 22 carries. Jerry Jeudy had 6 receptions, 76 yards on the score. And Dylan Gabriel didn't look too bad. He looked way better than Justin Fields, 167 yards, 17 to 32, and 2 scores. That final score ended up being like it was going back and forth in this game. And I think that one of these teams possibly might get that overall #1 pick going into the 2026 draft. But the final score ended up being 27-20. New York Jets got their second win on the season, and they're both tied at 2-7. So I want to see what happens from there. Another good contest, too, was the Jacksonville Jaguars and Houston Texans. I know the Jaguars coach, he was pissed. I feel like when you see this, Liam Cohen definitely threw his, headset and everything off. He wasn't happy at all. This was a game that I thought that the Jacksonville Jaguars had, and this was going to be a game that they were just going to run away with and be 6-3 on the season because you never know what Jaguars team you're going to get. And it was one of those performances where I felt like they looked sharp, but then it was lackluster at the end. Trevor Lawrence had 158 yards, 13 of 23, a touchdown, and a pick on the game. Funny thing is, you was playing against the backup in Houston. And what I seen in this game is Davis Mills, man, even when he is a backup, man, he'll win you some games. And he's not really that bad of a quarterback when you give him an opportunity, especially when you give him protection. 292 yards, 27 of 45, 2 touchdowns, and he had a pick on the day. Travis Etienne had 58 yards on 16 carries and a touchdown. Woody Marks had 63 yards on 14 carries, and he had the scores yet as well. Nico Collins had 136 yards on 7 receptions. Wanted him to get in the end zone, for some of my fantasy people, but that didn't materialize. What I liked about this game was at one point you thought for sure that Jacksonville had this game and it was over with, but they kept clawing and the Texans kept clawing, and they had 26 points in that fourth quarter. That was very impressive. The final score was 36-29. Another game that was a shocker to me. There's a lot of parity this week because I never really thought that the Panthers was a powerhouse team, but I thought that they'd do better against the New Orleans Saints, who we call the New Orleans Aints. And this was another performance right here was a head scratcher. I'm thinking maybe because it's hot right now in Miami and Buffalo's used to cold weather, but nah, man, I actually seen this game and stunned by the least is an understatement, I should say. Josh Allen had 306 yards, 28 of 40, 2 touchdowns, and he had a pick on the day. The issue is he had a pick and he was trying to do too much in the ground game and he fumbled the ball and it cost them costly points. They were already down by a lot when they got that fumble. And yeah, he tried to will them back into the game, but it was too little too late. What I was surprised about was they neutralized James Cook III as well. He had 13 carries for 53 yards. And Tua had some picks and he had his flaws in the game. 173 yards, 15 to 21, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. But that man, Devon Achane, had 174 yards on 22 carries and 2 touchdowns. And Jalen Waddles had a really impressive game with 5 receptions, 84 yards, and a touchdown. And that final score was definitely a shocker, 30-13. And you start to question, you always see these hiccup type games with Josh Allen. I don't think that I would see a game like that in the season with Patrick Mahomes. He might lose in the playoffs or might lose in a big game in the Super Bowl, but he usually go far. Josh Allen had these questionable games during the year. Sometimes he have questionable games. A lot of times he have questionable games in the playoffs. And you're trying to see after this game, where are they going to go from there? Like I said, 30-13 of you that told me that, man, I'd have laughed in your face when I made those predictions. I want to go on to the Giants and Chicago Bears game. By the way, if you guys already know, you possibly know this already. This was the reason why they fired Brian Daboll from New York. We already knew that his seat was hot and it was on fire, but this game was the last straw right here. One thing I want to say too, and I'm not trying to act like I'm a coach or I know everything. That's the opposite of me. But why would you have 5 design run plays for your quarterback and then he goes out with a concussion? I still feel like if Jackson Dart stayed in that game, they could have won that game. It's no possibility, or I think they possibly or might, or what if. No. Him being healthy would have had this victory in the bag for New York. Them 5 design run plays and him ended up getting that concussion cost him that game. What can I say though? Chicago's been taking advantage of some games where teams who are not better than them and they go and they punch those teams in the mouth. Caleb Williams had 220 yards, 20 of 36 in the score. DeAndre Swift had 13 carries, 80 yards. Roma Dunze had 86 yards on 6 receptions in the score as well. And when you look over here on Tyrone Tracy Jr., he had a not too bad of a run game, 14 carries, 71 yards. Darius Slayton caught some really crazy, spectacular catches as well, 4 receptions, 89 yards. The final score ended up being 24-20. New York had the lead after 3 quarters. And I was thinking, okay, they're up by 10. There's no way they're going to lose this game, especially in the fourth quarter. Wasn't a lot of time left. And they only scored 3 points while Chicago scored 14. And that was the walk-off victory. Like I said, that final score was 24-20. Minnesota Vikings against the Baltimore Ravens. They was coming off of a high after beating us after we had that bye week. It was no excuses. I felt like JJ executed when he needed to, and he did a good job in that game. I'm moving forward now, and I want to talk about the Ravens game. I definitely picked the Ravens because I still feel like they wasn't battle tested. They're playing a team now who's hungry. They have to win, and you have Lamar Jackson back. He doesn't have any of the rust, even though they said he had a little rust and he was rusty when he came back and still threw 4 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson had 176 yards, 17 to 29, and he had a touchdown. Derrick Henry had 20 carries and 75 yards, and Zay Flowers had 4 receptions for 75 yards. It was a lot of defense in this one that helped the Ravens out, in my opinion. J.J. McCarthy had 248 yards, 20 of 42, a touchdown, and he had 2 costly picks. Like, you threw a pick, I believe Justin Jefferson slipped. And I was like, man, you look like you was throwing it to Kyle Hamilton, the defender on the Baltimore Ravens. And the crazy part was they put a lock on Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and that's why they didn't really have a huge game. But Jalen Naylor had 124 yards on 5 receptions and a touchdown. They said, we'll let you let him win, but we're not going to let Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison beat us. And that was the part of the game that I feel like that was a smart game plan. And that was something that we should have looked into because them winning their game against us was because of that gentleman, Justin Jefferson. But I got to give credit where credit is due because the Baltimore Ravens defense is healthy. Their offense look healthier and they look like they're trending in the right direction at the right time. That final score was 27-19. I want to talk about another good game too, you guys. Well, let me get to the blowout game first. It's funny too because I have some things to say about this game because of the fact is I don't know if you guys know, but it was a soft benching with Kyler Murray, and they're saying now it's a possibility that he might not stay with that team. I think they're going to rest him. They said he's on IR, but I think, like I said, it's a soft benching where they're going to keep him out, see what Jacoby Brissett can do right now, and take it from there. Jacoby Brissett didn't play bad, but the team didn't really play well. I can't really say that much, but I just feel like Seattle Seahawks defense played that much better. This is what's scary about this team, too. Sam Darnold wasn't as effective in his game. I feel like it was Dexter Lawrence. No, Demarcus Lawrence. I'm sorry about that. Apologize to you, sexy Dexy. But yes, in this game, Sam Darnold had 178 yards, 10 of 12, and he had a touchdown and a pick on the day. Jacoby Brissett had 258 yards, 22 of 42, and he had two touchdowns. And that guy, Tyler McBride, is one of the best tight ends in the game who don't get the credit he deserves. 9 receptions, 127 yards, and he had a score as well. Zach Charbonnet looked pretty well too, because I believe Kenneth Walker is injured right now. He had 83 yards, 14 carries, and a touchdown. And that guy, Jackson Smith and Jigba, is showing the reason why they said that you could take DK Metcalf. And, he basically stepped up as that number one. And they got Cooper Cutback, who made a spectacular catch and almost got in the end zone. We had the hamstring injury. So old man time is starting to catch up with him. But the final score was very dominant. Like I said, DeMarcus Lawrence had two fumble recoveries and scooped them up for two scores. And it was just pretty cool to see. That final score was a blowout, 44-22. And I just wanted to get that out of the way right quick before I talk about the next two games, because I couldn't talk about the Monday night game last because it was just too bad for me. I'm sorry for all the people who like defense. And, I love a good defensive game, but then you got to put some points on the board for me as well. I want to get into the Rams and the 49ers game. That was a blowout too, but credit where credit is due. They said that Matthew Stafford, this is the first person to do this in history. This man had 3 games where he had 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. And right now, I believe he's one of the lead candidates in the MVP voting right now. 280 yards, 24, 36, and 4 scores. And Kyron Williams had 73 yards on 14 carries and 2 touchdowns as well. Devontae Adams, man, he just really looked good over there, and they're gelling over there. He had 6 receptions, 77 yards, and a score. Mac Jones did what he could. He had 319 yards, didn't look too bad, 33 and 39, very consistent with the ball. 3 touchdowns. He had a pick on the day. Brian Robinson had 41 yards on 8 carries and a touchdown as well. George Kittle had 84 yards, 9 receptions, and he had a score too. So the game wasn't that bad until it got bad. But I give credit where credit is due. That Rams defense is gelling, and they look pretty sharp right now. One of the best defenses and offensives. I think they have the best of both worlds. They got a good formula over there. And it's going to be a hell of a contest next week, if I'm not mistaken, because I know who they facing, and I'll be doing my predictions shortly. This game wasn't as good as I thought that it was going to be, too, because I don't really feel like the Chargers played that good. But it was just the Steelers played that bad. Surprising to me, too, after coming off of that huge win when they beat the Colts, and then they come back and lay this egg. A lot of people even looked at it and said Aaron Rodgers need to retire. I was like, man, I don't know if you need to put it all on him. Not quite yet, but yeah, it didn't look so good, that performance. Rodgers had 161 yards, 16 to 31. He had a touchdown and 2 picks on the day. 2 questionable picks, too. Justin Herbert had 220 yards, 20 of 33, and he had a score. This guy right here, Kamani Vidal, wasn't expecting him to have this huge performance. 95 yards, 25 carries, and a touchdown. Jalen Warren didn't look too bad. 14 carries, 70 yards. But Lad McConkey had 107 yards on 4 receptions and a touchdown, and he was looking pretty sharp in that game. Roman Wilson had 35 yards on 2 receptions and had a score as well. But I feel like that was garbage points. That final score was 25 to 10. Yeah, funky score, but yeah, I just was really surprised with that performance as well. Would have thought that it'd have been a little bit better executed. I want to get into my predictions now. Let me get into here, you guys. I want to get into my NCAA Week 12 prediction. That's what I want to get off into right now. And I want to start off, and I'm hoping we have a good week. Clemson versus number 15, Louisville. I would take Louisville at home, but I'm only give them a light, spread. I'll give them the 3.5 points. I believe they'll cover that. Minnesota versus Oregon. They're saying 25.5 for Oregon at home. I'm going to go under that, but I'll go with Oregon. Number 21, Michigan versus Northwestern. I'm going to go with Michigan on the road, and I'll take the 12.5 points. Wisconsin versus Indiana, they're saying 29.5. I think that Indiana learned their lesson. They're still number two, by the way. But I believe that it's going to be under that. I believe Indiana not this time going to sleep like they did in that last game against Penn State. But still, I feel like they're not going to cover that 29.5. South Carolina versus number three Texas A&M. I definitely believe Texas A&M going to do this spread with the 18.5, especially with Marcel Reed clicking on all cylinders. Number 10, Notre Dame versus number 24 Pitt. I'm going to go with Notre Dame, and I'm going to take the 11.5 points. Number 12, Oklahoma versus number 4, Alabama. Now, this one, I hope be a good one. But I'm going to take the points, and I'm going to go with the 6.5 at Alabama at home. UCF versus number 8, Texas Tech. I'm going to give Texas Tech that point spread with the 23.5, and I'm going with Texas Tech. Number 14, Virginia versus Duke. I'm going with the upset, and I'm going with Duke with the 6.5 because I'm disappointed in Virginia. I don't trust them whatsoever. Call me crazy. Number 17, Georgia Tech versus Boston College. I'm going to give Georgia Tech the benefit of the doubt, and I'll give them the 16.5. North Carolina State versus number 18, Miami. I'll give Miami the spread with the 14.5. Number 20, Iowa versus number 19, USC. I'm going with the upset, and I'm going to go with Iowa on the road, and I'm going to get under 6.5 points. New Mexico State versus Tennessee. I definitely expect Tennessee to cover this spread with the 40.5. There's no reason they shouldn't. Florida versus Ole Miss. I'm going to go with Ole Miss, but I'm going to go under the 15.5 because Florida defense is too good. Number 13, Utah versus Baylor. I'm going to give Utah the advantage with the 8.5. Purdue versus number 23, Washington. I'm going to go with Washington, but under the 16.5. UCLA versus Ohio State. I'm going to go with Ohio State, and I'm going with the 32.5. Number 11, Texas versus Georgia. I'll go with Georgia at home, but I'm going to go under the 6.5. I'm going to go 3.5. Mississippi State versus Missouri. I'm going to go with Mizzou in the 7.5. And TCU versus number 7, Baylor. I'm going to go with BYU, and I'm going to go with number 7 winning. I believe they're going to cover more than that, 4.5. So I'm going to give them the over. I want to step into the NFL right now. Okay, now that you're ready, before I even say this too, if you guys want to make your predictions like we do on my other show, the Guru Sports Section, I'll give you a second. Okay, Jets versus the Patriots. I'll go with the Patriots at home with the 11.5. No disrespect to the Jets. I know they're trying to do the damn thing, but I just don't know if they have enough for the Patriots on the road. Commanders versus the Dolphins. I'm going to go with the Dolphins with the 2.5. Bengals versus the Steelers. I'm gonna go with the Steelers, and I'm gonna go with the 4.5 because they've been very pedestrian as of late. Chargers versus the Jaguars. I'm gonna go with the Chargers in 2.5. Buccaneers and Buffalo Bills. They give Buffalo the 5.5 point favor. I'm going to go with the Buffalo team, but I'm gonna go with the 3.5 because I don't trust them to cover that score. Bears and Vikings. I'm gonna go with Minnesota at home because this is their real true contest, and I'll give the 3.5 to Minnesota. Barely. The Texans versus the Titans. I'm gonna go with Houston, of course, with the 7.5. Panthers and Falcons. The Falcons better beat them this time, and I'm gonna go over that 3.5 points. Green Bay versus the Giants. They're going to take all their frustrations out on the Giants, and I'm gonna give Green Bay the 7.5 point favor. This was the contest I was telling you guys about. This 405 contest, man. Get your popcorn ready, please. Seattle Seahawks versus the Rams. Damn, this is going to be a good one. They match so much in intensity. Their defense match defense. Their offense match. They went in the trenches. They got explosive plays. This game has it all. I'm going to go with the Rams on this one. I'm going to go with the 2.5 on this one. I should go a little under that, but I believe the Rams will cover that at home at least. The 49ers versus the Cardinals. I'm going to give the 49ers the edge by 2.5 on the road. The Ravens versus the Browns. I'm gonna give it to Baltimore with the 8.5. The Chiefs and the Broncos. I'm gonna give it to the Chiefs because of the fact is, if the Broncos cannot score, you're not going to beat Kansas City. Even though I don't believe Kansas City will be scoring all that much, I just don't trust them after that really poor performance that they put up against a Las Vegas Raiders team, where it was 10-7 on Thursday night football. They ought to have been ashamed of themselves. I don't believe that that'll be enough to beat Kansas City. And if you can't put the points on the board, I'm gonna give it to Kansas City by 3.5. This is the game I wanted to talk about too. You have my Detroit Lions going on the road to take the Philadelphia Eagles. I know a few people are upset too because they've seen Jalen Phillips have a breakthrough game, and they feel like with a third rounder, we could have got this man. And the crazy part was Miami took all the money in that deal to the rest of the deal. So yeah, a lot of people were upset here in the D. They said we didn't get no pass rusher or try to get any guys on the offense for the trenches to help us out with a banged up offensive line. I'm still just gonna trust what Brad gonna do, and hopefully we can see more by next season. I mean, it's time for him to start taking those risks like Howie Roseman because as bad as that Monday game was, just recently, I believe this was the reason it panned off because they still won that game and Jalen Phillips was a shining star in that game. And they don't even have Jair Alexander back yet, too. So, yeah, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. That being said, Detroit Lions versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Man, I would hate to say this. I definitely feel like if Philly's clicking on all cylinders, they can win this game. But like I said, you're going to have to stop Detroit enough to win this game. I'm going to barely give this game to Detroit, and I'm going to give them a 1.5. Maybe I'm a homer, and because they got the Eagles winning by 2.5, and it was 3.5, and it keeps going down lower and lower before this game. I just feel like people are afraid of that last performance. But if we can't stop them on defense or execute, we'll have a problem. But I'm gonna have a little faith on this one, and I'm gonna go with the Detroit Lions by 1.5 because that game could go any way. And I'm not trying to say we're gonna win, but I would love for us to. Dallas Cowboys versus the oh my God, why would they put this on Monday Night Football, y'all? And this is why my co-hosts on the other show be so damn pissed off. Dallas Cowboys against the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm gonna give this to the Dallas Cowboys by 3.5. Wow, you guys, y'all could have flexed that and did something better for us, man. That definitely pissed me off seeing that after having such a good, weekend with some of the performances that's going to be played. Especially, damn, y'all could have put the well. I know that since that was on Sunday night, they couldn't switch and flex our game, but damn. They could have flexed it with another game, man. Not the Cowboys and the Raiders, man. I would have liked to seen that Rams and Seahawks game on Monday. That would have been perfect. But yeah, man, don't give us stuff like that, man. As fans, we don't deserve that BS, man. Y'all can do better in the NFL. It's already bad enough to officiate and it's trash. But then y'all do this to us on the Monday. And then the Thursday game is not going to be too bad because I believe at least the Patriots going to put up some points, and then the Jets are, trying to play for, Aaron Glenn. All due respect, but damn, man, y'all could have did better than that. Let me go on, man. I don't want to even be pissed off and rant about that. Don't mess up my beautiful day. These are my social media networks you can catch me on. I'm Hoovy, WHOOVI on Instagram. I like to say thank you all for the love and support y'all been giving me on Instagram. Y'all been giving me a lot more support since I've been telling y'all to click those links. The Sports Guru to You is my Facebook page where I put the breaking news and the scores and different things around the league. And Hugh.Lee6 is my TikTok page. I love it that the fact that they interact with me, they're showing love on the promos and the things that I do. Thank you all for your love and support, for my family, my loved ones, the Nighthawk Network, and everybody in the network. You know who you are. I like to say on that note, thank you all for chiming in. And this is the holiday season. I just hope that y'all be blessed, have a good time, and enjoy the moment with your family and loved ones. You never know what anybody's going through in this world. We all going through something, but I just like to say, man, keep God first and be happy. Once again, I would like to say peace And definitely looking forward to seeing you guys with some more good news and try to have the best podcast and the brand that I possibly can. Enjoy yourselves, and until next week.